Good morning, and thank you for joining our live talk with STEM Ambassador Jen, the Education Manager at the Manta Trust. The Manta Trust is a charity leading global manta and devil ray research and conservation, if you didn't know that. So today, in celebration of World Manta Day, Jen will take us on a journey into the world of manta and devil rays, why they matter, the threats they face, and the conservation efforts, including how international trade and upcoming policy decisions impact their survival. Feel free to post your questions in the chat and Jen will answer as many as she can at the end. So now let's get started. Good morning, Jen.
Good morning, Lisa, and good morning to everyone joining us today. It's my absolute pleasure to come and talk to you today on what is a very, very important day for us as marine biologists, because today is World Manta Day, a day celebrated by people all across the world as we come together to share what amazing animals manta and devil rays are. Now, if you haven't heard of a manta ray before, or you can't quite picture one in your head, have a good look at that screen. There is a beautiful group of manta rays there for you. I'll introduce them to you and the devil rays as we go through today. But really importantly, the theme of World Manta Day this year is called the power of protection. And as Lisa mentioned, manta and devil rays definitely need our help. They really need every bit of kind of legislation and law and policy help they can get. And there's some important decisions being made this year that I'm going to talk you through as we go through our presentation. So I think with that, let's get started. First of all, there is not just one type of manta ray or even one type of devil ray, they're close relative. There are many, many types. We think 10 different types or 10 different species of manta and devil ray. On the top row there, you can see 3 different species of manta ray. One has actually just been announced this year, a new species of manta ray, that we didn't know for sure was a separate species until very recently. And then underneath those 3 species in the middle row and the bottom row, we have the devil rays, a very, very close relative of the manta ray. Generally, they're a little bit smaller. You can see as you look at the pictures, maybe slight differences in the colours, slight differences in the coloration and the patterns of these rays here. So to help us find out more about manta and devil rays, before we go on to why they need our help, I thought we'd start with a small quiz to get us nice and awake this Wednesday morning. We're going to play a quick game of true or false. Now, I cannot see you sat in your classrooms or sat in your assembly halls, but I'm hoping that you're all sat with a teacher somewhere nearby. I'm going to give you some pieces of information, and for then I'm going to give you a little bit of time in your classrooms to decide whether you think that information is true or whether you think it's false. Maybe you want to do a quick vote with your hands. So let's try our first one. True or false? A manta ray is a type of fish. Have a good look at that picture there. What do you think? Is this animal a fish? I'm going to pause for 30 seconds to let you decide. I'm just going to give you a little 5-second warning. We're going to come back together in 5 seconds. Okay, how did you get on? Hopefully you've all made a decision whether or not you think the animal there is a type of fish. If you said it was true, I am giving you a big round of applause and I'm saying well done, because manta and devil rays are fish. People often say false here. They don't really look like the type of fish we might imagine. They're actually incredibly closely related to sharks. And sharks and rays are a type of fish called an elasmobranch. And all that really means is that instead of having a skeleton made out of bone like we do, the skeleton of rays and sharks is made out of cartilage. Cartilage is that stuff at the end of your nose. You can go ahead and give it a wobble. Or the stuff in your earlobe. It's kind of quite bendy and flexible. Imagine having a skeleton made out of that cartilage. If you're a manta ray, it's great. It means that you're really lightweight. You're really buoyant in the water column. It's helping you to stay afloat. So they are a type of fish. Okay, let's try number 2. True or false? Manta rays are the biggest fish in the ocean. I'll give you again just a little bit of time. True or false, are they the biggest fish in the ocean? And just a little 5-second warning to make up your minds. About to come back together. Okay, what did you think? Are they the biggest fish in the ocean? This time, if you said false, you would be correct. They are big, but they are not the biggest fish in the ocean. And maybe in your minds, you can think what the biggest fish in the ocean is. And if anyone is thinking, the whale shark, well done, because there is our biggest fish in the ocean, the mighty, beautiful whale shark. And you can see just how big this animal is, because look, there is an adult human diving just above the whale shark, above that top dorsal fin, and you can see just how large this animal is. Now, the manta ray is not as big as a whale shark, but they are definitely still giants of the ocean. Here is the biggest species, the biggest type of manta ray. We call this an oceanic manta ray. Again, you can see the diver, the photographer there with the big camera next to the manta ray. You can get an idea of the size. But generally, we would say in width, so from one wing to the other wing, one pectoral fin to the other pectoral fin, we'd say they can grow up to a maximum of about 7 meters. Now, maybe after our call today, you might want to measure it out. You could do 7 giant strides across the classroom and just see how big they can get, but they really are giant. So whilst we're looking at this picture, imagine being that photographer. Imagine being the marine biologist in the water with these animals and think, how would that feel? Would you like it? Would you be excited? Would you be a little bit nervous, a little bit scared? It's pretty normal for people to be a bit nervous. They are very large. But generally we say, no need to be scared. They are not a stingray, although they're related to stingrays. They're not a stingray. They don't have a stinger on their tail. They can't really hurt you in any way whatsoever. And in fact, we tend to say they're gentle giants. They're pretty lovely, gentle animals. Now, even though they are so big, one of the biggest animals in the whole ocean, they're actually the tiniest animals in the ocean, just like the whale shark also does. Here we have a picture of a plankton, a type of plankton called a copepod. Plankton generally, most of them are so small we can't even see them. We would need a microscope to view most of them. Here are images from a microscope. Even though they're so tiny, this is really the majority of the food that they eat. Okay, let's try another one. I think we've got 2 more. True or false? Manta rays can jump out of the water. Think about that big colossal animal there. Can it jump out of the water? True or false? It can jump out of the water. Again, I'll give you 20 to 30 seconds or so to decide. Again, just a 5-minute warning, a 5-second warning. Okay, let's come back together. Hopefully you've all had time there to do your vote. Can they jump out of the water? Well, to give you the answer this time, I'm going to show you a short video clip. Let's have a watch together. Well, there was our answer. There is our beautiful ray jumping out of the water. That one was true. Many marine animals will jump out of the water. We call this breaching behavior. And, one of the most amazing things about working with manta rays is there is an awful lot of things we do not really know yet about them, including why do they jump out of the water? Now, we've got a few guesses, and probably the primary guess is that we think they do it to maybe dislodge parasites, these kind of almost like annoying bugs on their body that are probably quite irritating for them. That impact hopefully helps to get rid of them. Okay, last one, I think. True or false, manta rays have the biggest brain of any fish. Again, 20 seconds or so to make up your minds. Okay, and just a 5-second warning before we come back together. Okay, so true or false, manta rays have the biggest brain of any fish. I wonder what you went for. If you went for true, again, I'm giving you that big round of applause. Well done. They do have the biggest brain of any fish for their body size ratio. And that's actually really important because we think for a fish, they are pretty intelligent. They show lots of signs of being intelligent. They have that big brain. The brain looks much more similar to a mammal's brain, like a dolphin's, than a fish's. And they show lots of really interesting behavior, both towards other manta rays and other marine animals, but also towards humans. Now, in this photo here, you can see a scuba diver, and manta rays are often reported to come over to scuba divers or snorkelers and kind of hang around them quite often. You know, people often say it's like the manta ray looked me in the eye and really tried to work out what I was all about. So lots of really kind of curious and social behaviors that they show. Now, hopefully I've tried to convince you there that the manta ray and the devil ray, they are amazing animals, beautiful, big, charismatic, gentle giants of our ocean. And generally most people love them. But even though they are so well loved and so charismatic, they absolutely need our help. Now here we have almost all the species of manta and devil ray, 9 out of 10 species listed. The only one missing is the one very new to us. We do not yet know enough about it. But here, of these 9 species that we do know much more about, look, almost all of them, 7 out of 9, have this big red word in common, endangered, which really just means they're in danger. We're really worried about how they're going to do in the future. Their populations are declining and declining quite rapidly. So let's have a look as we go on a little bit about why that is. First of all, we've got an image here, perhaps quite a sad image to look at. But this is one of the biggest threats to not just manta and devil rays, but most of our marine animals out in the ocean. The biggest threat, if you're a manta or devil ray, is fishing. Fishing for a number of reasons. First of all, what we've got here on this photo is accidental capture of a manta ray. No one intended here to capture this manta ray. It happened by accident. But this happens really, really frequently. Often these big nets are laid out in the ocean to catch fish for us to eat, things like tuna, because of the demand from humans. But these nets are pretty indiscriminate. It's really hard just to catch one species like tuna. And in fact, we're catching usually many species that live in the ocean, whether it's dolphins or turtles or sharks or seabirds, or we think probably tens of thousands of manta and devil rays each year. Now, when they are caught accidentally like this, often they are thrown back into the water, but sometimes they have sadly already not survived, or even if they are still alive when thrown back, we think they don't tend to do very well afterwards because of the stress and trauma of being caught. When we catch an animal like this accidental capture, we call this bycatch. Bycatch is one of the main problems for them. Oh, I got a little bit out of sync there, but that's okay. The other problem facing them here is to do with a body part. So to explain, here we've got our manta ray swimming through the ocean. And I know that this manta ray is feeding, it's looking for food, it's looking for those lovely tasty plankton. I know that because that big mouth is open wide and these fins have come round to the front of its head, almost like a funnel. And that is what it's doing, it's funneling kind of litres and litres of plankton-filled water in through its mouth. And if I were able to zoom into the mouth, what I would see is this kind of unusual looking structure here called a gill plate. And this gill plate is a bit like your kitchen sieve. It's allowing the water to pass through the gill plate and out of the body of the manta and back to the ocean, but it's capturing all those teeny tiny microscopic pieces of plankton for the manta ray to eat. Now, the reason I mention this is that these gill plates are really, really important when it comes to looking at how to protect a manta ray. Because not only are manta rays caught accidentally as bycatch, but many, many times they are also caught on purpose. They are targeted. They might be targeted for their meat for eating, but more than that, they are targeted for this body part, the gill plates that you can see here. They're cut from the body of the manta ray, they're dried out in the sun, they're packaged up, and they're usually shipped to different areas of the world. And you might find them for sale, like we see here. Now here what we have a traditional Chinese medicine shop, and this is an ingredient in a traditional Chinese medicine recipe. This gill plate is put into a form of soup, just like the one that you can see here. If you look carefully, you can see that gill plate up towards the top right of the soup, the bowl of soup, and over the top of it you can see pictures of pipefish there as well, which is also an ingredient in this soup. Now, this soup is thought to have medicinal properties. It's thought to reduce inflammation, get rid of toxins from the body, but I must stress that there has never been any scientific evidence that taking this soup will make you any better, will increase your health. And in fact, sharks and rays, they usually accumulate lots of heavy metals like lead in their body. So in fact, actually having the soup we think is probably likely to make you more unwell than it is well. But unfortunately, it is the kind of number one reason for their decline. And it's actually not thought to be a traditional recipe at all, but came around in the last few decades, probably more as kind of clever marketing, as perhaps shark fin soup became harder to get hold of. We see the rise perhaps of this instead as an alternative. Now, one of the reasons this is so problematic is because of the way manta rays are, what I'm going to call their life history. They have a very, very conservative life history is what I would say. And what I mean by that is that they are very long-lived, very slow-growing animals, just like we are as humans. Okay, we know that they live a long time. We don't know for sure just how long they live. Probably a minimum of 40 years, maybe more like 50 years, maybe more like 60 years. You know, no one's really been studying them for long enough to know for sure. We know that they will not start to reproduce and have young until they're somewhere in the region of about 10 years old, depending on the species. We know when they do begin to reproduce and have young, they would carry the baby inside their body, they'd be pregnant for around about 13 months, longer than we are as humans. Then they do tend to give birth usually just to one baby at a time, occasionally twins, but usually one at a time. And then that same individual, that mum, may not give birth again for another maybe 2, maybe 3 years. In some locations, maybe even as much as 7 years. She might give birth only once every 7 years. And so if you really now think about this, very slow growing, give birth once maybe every 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 years, you can start to see that they're not going to replenish the population very quickly. Therefore, if we start to take any number of them from the ocean, the population goes down very, very quickly indeed. So the question is really, today, World Manta Day, the power of protection, how are we protecting them? What are we doing about this? It's a really good question. Now, the law is really important. When I say to people, what should we do? They usually say, well, make it illegal. We shouldn't be allowed to capture them. We shouldn't be allowed to do this. And well, the answer is it kind of already is legal. So back in 2013, 12 years ago now, both manta and devil rays were voted onto something called Appendix 2 of CITES. Let me explain what that means. CITES is an international agreement between countries. Countries have voluntarily come together to say, we want to join this thing called CITES. And CITES, pretty much like a law that is saying, we are in place to try and protect animals from the danger of international trade. We're trying to make sure that they do not go in danger, become extinct because of the trade of the animal or the trade of their body parts, like the gill plate. And there are different levels of protection in CITES. Appendix 2, the second level of protection, is like the middle level of protection, medium protection. Okay, and it means that people cannot trade manta rays or their body parts like the gill plates unless they can prove it is sustainable. Unless they can prove that by trading them, it's not going to have an effect on the population. The population is not going to go down. We don't actually think that's possible. But it has meant that there's a loophole in this law. There's a place in the law that people can take advantage of and say, I've been able to prove that this is sustainable. So this law has not really been working very well. It's been in place now for 12 years. It was a good step forward, but we see that manta and devil ray populations are still declining. And this year we have a really important opportunity in November, because this year we have the opportunity to try to get manta and devil rays uplisted, pushed up from Appendix 2 medium protection to Appendix 1 top level protection. And if they get pushed up to Appendix 1 top level protection, it means there can be no trade of the animals or their body parts. It is completely banned. There is no loophole for people to take advantage of. And so that is what we're working towards this November, fingers crossed. And you can see in this picture here, we're holding up a big banner, Save the Mantas. I have my Save the Mantas t-shirt on today. This is all a big campaign about this uplisting in November. We are trying to get people to wear these t-shirts and take photos of them wearing these t-shirts, so that in November, we can share all these photos in a big exhibition for people coming together from around the world to say, look, there is public pressure for this to go ahead. People want these animals to be saved. And so this is your call to action. If you would like to get involved, you can do this too. I mean, you could get the t-shirt and you can take a photo with it, but within your schools, why not do some lovely artwork, make a banner, make the Save the Mantas banner, draw some Save the Mantas picture, send us the photos, we can display them, we can show people that the public pressure is really there. And maybe today you thought, actually, this is a pretty cool job, and it is, hands up, this is an amazing thing to do with your working life. Maybe you're thinking, one day perhaps I'd like to work with animals, maybe marine animals, maybe trying to protect these animals that most need our help. And if you want to do that, of course, it is absolutely something anyone can do. It doesn't matter what background you come from, doesn't matter if you're a boy, a girl, etc., etc. Anyone can go on to do this job. You don't necessarily have to do it with manta rays. There are hundreds, thousands of animals out there that could need our help, whether it's to find out more about them or to help us with that protection. And here are just two animals you can find here in the UK that I used to work with. On the left, we have the amazing basking shark, relative of the manta ray. And on the right-hand side there, we have the beautiful grey seal. We're very lucky here in the UK. We have more grey seals than anywhere else in the whole planet. Just two examples of animals we can find and work with here in the UK. But otherwise, I just want to say a huge thank you to you for coming together today on World Manta Day and for hearing about the work that we're trying to do to protect the manta ray. Do check out our social media, share our Save the Manta post for us, and feel free to get involved in those ways that I mentioned. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer those for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. That was absolutely brilliant. It was so informative, so thank you. We have got some great questions in the chat already, but if anybody else would like to put some in there, we'll try and answer as many as we can. So shall we get started?
Okay, sounds great.
Right, quite a lot here. I think you did mention this, but perhaps you can just remind our audience, how many types of manta rays are there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let me just quickly zoom back to the photos. It's nice to have a bit of a visual guide here. So we have now, I would now say 10 different species of manta and devil ray. But if you had asked me maybe even 3 months ago, I would have said 9 species, because we do have the new species of manta ray, which has just been announced this year. So on the top there, we have 3 different species of manta ray. And then underneath, the middle row and the bottom row are our species of devil ray. You can see they do all look very similar. We do just have differences in size and pattern and coloration, but generally, they do all look quite similar here. And I always think it sounds a bit funny to say, if you'd asked me 3 months ago, I'd say 2 species of manta. Now I say 3 species of manta. You think, oh, how can you not know how many different species are out there? But in actual fact, it's very, very difficult to know. If you look at those 3 species of manta at the top, they actually all look very similar, and they might overlap a little bit in their size range and overlap a little bit in where they're found in the world. And so, you might start to get a suspicion that an animal could be a different species, maybe looks a little different, acts a little different. But until you can kind of test the genetics of those animals, it can be quite a hard thing to know for sure. So, now I would say 10 species of manta and devil ray. But if you came back to me in 2 years, I might say something different. Who knows?
Let's hope so. Another question. What does a normal day as a marine biologist look like?
Oh, great question. Yeah, what does a normal day as a marine biologist look like? I mean, it's pretty impossible to answer, really, because it would totally depend what area of marine biology you work in, what your job is. You know, some people spend a lot of time in the field, which is what we say when they're out kind of working in the ocean a lot. Some people spend a lot of time in a lab. Some people actually spend a lot of time on their computer. You know, it really depends. Even those people that work in the field a lot, they have computer days regularly. So it really depends, you know, what you're up to that day, what your focus of your work is, etc. If I take the role of a marine biologist working for us at the Manta Trust, again, it differs a little bit depending on the job role, but I'm going to think of the most kind of traditional marine biologist role. They are based out, let's say, in the Maldives, where we have big populations of reef manta. And generally, most days, they are out on the research boat during the manta season, which is a period of several months. And during that time, they're spending maybe up to 8 hours in the water, trying to find mantas, trying to take photographs of them, because that's how we recognize them, by looking at the spot pattern underneath. So collecting what we call photo IDs, maybe doing other things like taking ultrasounds to see how many are pregnant. Could be all sorts of different things. But, you know, really there just is no typical day. It could be lab work, could be field work, could be computer work, could be writing reports, could be education, telling people about them, all sorts of different things.
Oh, very varied.
Yeah,
And
really.
it certainly is. And that leads us nicely on to the next question. What subjects in school are most useful if we want to study marine biology, the ocean?
Good question. Yeah, of course, number one, I mean, you guess probably number one subject is going to be biology. Biology is really, really, I'd say, kind of the most vital, and probably, I'm always a little bit hesitant to say this, but probably in my experience, probably the only vital one. There are others which would be beneficial, but I'd say biology is your vital subject. Other sciences are going to help. You know, if you can understand things like chemistry, it helps you with the chemistry of the ocean. Physics can help you with kind of motion. And maths is always good because we look a lot at data and statistics. But, you know, a lot of marine biologists I come across are actually really creative people. And that can be really great too, because it can help you with kind of campaign work, helping you to get your message across to people. So I would say biology is number one. After that, it is a little bit more open. The traditional answer is probably that sciences and maths would also help. But, you know, I would say biology is the key one, really.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you very much. Another question we have here. What oceans do mantas populate?
Great question. You can find manta and devil rays really across the world. Now, what the key thing is with them is that they like kind of tropical and subtropical water. So generally you won't find them in kind of temperate cold waters. So we will not have manta or devil rays around the UK. We do get other species of ray like blonde rays, thornback rays, but we wouldn't see these manta or devil rays around the UK. But there is a species of devil ray that you can see even in the Mediterranean. And then generally, you kind of your manta rays is top row. Again, you're looking at kind of tropical regions across the kind of belt of the globe. So it could be that you're looking around kind of India way or Sri Lanka. It could be that you're looking over towards Australia. It could be that you're looking over towards Hawaii or the Caribbean. You know, all these kind of areas you might encounter manta and devil rays.
Thank you, Jen. You may know this, you may not, but we're looking for a rough answer here of how many mantas you think are still in our oceans.
Yeah, I absolutely do not know that. It's a really good question, and it's something that we're trying to really build a picture towards. So I mentioned before, we take photographs of the underneath of them because we photograph the spot pattern. You can just see on this top left one, just a couple of spots there. They all have different spot patterns. It's how we tell them apart. And so what we're trying to do is build up this kind of catalogue of images in different regions of the world where we see them. And then we can start to look at kind of what the population size is like. So if I took the Maldives, which is a really, really important location for manta and devil rays, you know, we have something like, let's say, 7,000 mantas in our database there, 7,000 different individuals. And then we can start to look at kind of doing some quite complicated maths to work out, you know, how often are we seeing those same individuals crop up kind of time and time again, versus how often are we seeing new individuals? And we can use that data to try and look a little bit at what we think the rough population size is. But generally, you know, we don't really know exactly across the whole world, you know, what the population looks like. That's still a little bit unknown.
Thank you. Although this is a very sad question, what would happen if manta rays disappeared from our oceans?
Good question. It's a really, really good question. People often say, you know, why are they important? I would say they're important for a few reasons. Number one, they play a really important role in the food chain. So I said to you before, they eat those plankton. The plankton really is kind of like the source of the food chain. It's kind of the basis of all the food chains. And manta rays, you can imagine, are consuming huge amounts of these plankton. So they're really kind of keeping the plankton levels in check in the ocean, along with some other animals too, of course. So that's one important role they play. Another one is a little bit maybe harder to imagine, is that manta rays spend a lot of time traveling from quite shallow water to quite deep water. They really transverse kind of, the depths of the ocean. And what that means is that they play a really important role in what we call as nutrient cycling, kind of taking nutrients from different areas of water and spreading those nutrients around through eating them and then kind of pooing out the remaining nutrients. They're really helping to keep the nutrients balanced in that ocean environment. And then a third reason is, again, a little bit more to do now with humans. They actually play a very, very important economic role for many countries too. Again, if I went back to that country, the Maldives, where huge amounts of manta rays in that location, very well looked after. And if you were to look up the Maldives, very quickly on Google Images, you'll probably see pictures of mantas because they play a really important economic role there. People will travel from all across the world to come and see mantas, to snorkel with them, to dive with them. And that means for that country, tourism is really important. And tourism driven by animals like manta rays is actually a really important driver of money coming into the country. So it also has a role for us as humans in many locations too.
Yeah, very important. We are running out of time. We're nearly we're there already, but we've got some great questions. So maybe we'll just take another one or two.
Sure.
What's the most exciting thing you've discovered or seen in your work? This is to you individually.
Great question. I don't know if it's anything necessarily that I've discovered, but I can tell you about the most amazing encounter because it's very fresh in my mind, because it recently happened. So just this summer, many of us from the Manta Trust, we went on a research expedition to the Azores. Now, if you're not familiar with the Azores, it's a group of islands owned by Portugal in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, so kind of equidistant from Portugal and America, really, kind of right in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the Atlantic. And we went there on purpose. We have a project we work with there who study the sickle fin devil ray. I'm going to circle it on my screen. It's this kind of olivey brown green ray here. And it's pretty rare to see these devil rays anywhere. But in this location, the Azores, in the summer months, every year they come together in really huge numbers. They accumulate in these large aggregations, these big groups. And what's really special about this location is that it seems to attract primarily adult pregnant females. And so no one knows why these females are coming, why they're coming when they're pregnant, why they're coming particularly in these months. It's all completely still a mystery. It's one of the things that we're trying to work out and why we've just been there. But from an experience point of view, it was probably one of the best experiences of my life. Imagine hanging just in the blue of the ocean. You can't see anything around you, no coral reef below, just the blue of the ocean. And then you look round and a wall of maybe 40 of these beautiful devil rays, about 4 meters in width, are coming. And they really were curious. They're circling all the divers. They're getting very close. They're really looking you in the eye. Just an amazing experience to have. And knowing the mystery behind why they're there and thinking, how on earth do you solve that? Really special moment.
Oh, how wonderful. And I think if we finish up on this question, is what advice would you give to somebody of obviously secondary school age, dreams of working with marine life?
Dreams of working with marine life, secondary school age. I mean, I think I'd give a few bits of advice. First bit of advice would be go for it. Absolutely go for it. It's an amazing job to do. Especially if you're someone that loves biology. If you're sort of thinking, I do really like biology, I enjoy finding out more about how humans or animals work, how the world works, how all these organisms work with each other. Absolutely go for it. Probably chances are you're going to want to go to university. It's going to be your next step to study. I mean, it could be biology, straight biology. It could be something like animal behavior, zoology. You could do marine biology, but it is quite specialist and niche. So it does narrow your options down quite early on. So, kind of your decision to make. You might want to do things like try scuba diving. You could do a trial dive if you haven't done that before to see if you enjoy being under the water. And, these would all be good steps to do. And then it is quite a competitive career. So, early on, try and start getting experience wherever you can. Maybe it's like lots of marine organizations do courses or do youth programs, opportunities for you to get involved. We run something at the Manta Trust called an Ocean Ambassador program, which is for 13 to 18-year-olds. We look for new people roughly every November-ish time. So follow all these organizations that you like on social media, sign up for their newsletters, look out for those opportunities, start trying to get involved early.
That's great advice. And of course, they can always look at the Manta Trust website.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
So, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We hope Jen has inspired you to help protect our oceans and their amazing inhabitants. And we wish you the best of luck, Jen. We hope November goes well. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.